morning. We are on Daf Chafei Mid Beis, learning as discussed for Shlomo Filan Chaya Basarach and Shira Bashalamis. We're about 9 lines from the bottom. Amr of Zera, Amr Rebbe. Hatzayrim Oizen Hapar. If someone makes a nick in the ear of a cow, v'achkach kibel damai. So that's a mum. That's the lightest mum you can make. Doesn't really. It's like you give the cow an earring. Doesn't even bother the cow that much, but it's still a mum. V'achkach kibel damai, and afterwards he does the kabbalah sadam puzzle. The carbon is going to be puzzle. Shenema v'lakach midam apar, and we darshan parsha hayikvar. We said that before. We had this pasuk earlier. We said v'lakach v'nosan. But now we're talking about that. You see, parsha hayikvar, that it has to be the same par by the lekicha, which is the kabbalah sadam, as it was at the time of the shechita, and we got a mum in between. So now you did the kabbalah with an animal that has a mum, then it's going to be possible.
Yeah, when the shechita was,
it's instantaneous. That's your question. That they have it's one by
after shechita.
Yeah, because certainly an animal that has a mum is going to be possible for shechita. But the Gemara's question is, what about if you? The Gemara talks about these things. It's hard to imagine because when you shech the animal, it seems like immediately afterwards the blood comes out. There doesn't seem to be a lot of time in between. I guess it means you coordinate it. You get one guy cutting the throat before the blood comes out. He clips the ear. So the question is, it doesn't make a difference anyway. This animal has a big gaping hole in its neck. Maybe we don't care that they gets a mum somewhere else. Where it says no, if it gets a mum before Kabbalah, that's going to pass it. So Ashkan Kachri Kachrim, this is talking about this pasuk v'lakach midam par. It's talking about the par koyin Mashiach, which is a chatas. All chatas is Kachri Kachrim. Maybe it's only by Kachri Kachrim that the pasuk applies. Kachrim kalam inal. And how do we know it applies to Kachrim kalam? So Rava says, Rava agrees to this question. It says we takanida a limud for Kachrim kalam. Tanya said Tom Zachar ben Shana. It says Lagabi the carbon pesach, which is kachim kalim. It has to be a sheep that's a tamim and a zachar and ben shana and a year old. So we say sheyehei tamim u ben shana b'shas shchita. So that tells you that the pasuk tells you b'mimat habayis meis yisev v'logachu shchein hakar v'al beisav mischus nefashos ishel b'yachlet achayis v'laseh. As again, that's what you should take to shech. Now talking about shechting. So that only tells you the shechita. How do we know the Kabbalah by Lacha Bezrika Minayin? How do we know for the rest of the Avodas that it has to still have all these qualities, that it has to still be a Tomim, and there has to be a Zachar, it has to be a Ben Shana. A Zachar is not going to change, in spite of what the woke might tell you now. But the other two, how do we know that they still apply by the other three avodas? Tamanlaima yield. The pasuk says, Setam zacha ben shana yia lochem minakvasim. So this yia tells you it has to remain in that with all those qualities. Layu elatam u ben shan. Whatever you do, all the avodas have to be both a tam and a ben shana. Esvei Abaya. So Abaya asked on Rava. Now Abaya, as Rashi explains, Abaya said he really didn't agree with the original question. He said you could really learn kachim kalam from the same pasuk that you learn kachim kachim. We wouldn't be machalik. Once the Torah tells you that it has to be the same, there's no reason to be machalik. So he asks on what Rava just said, that we learn from the pasuk that all four avodas, both by kachim kachim and kachim kalam, have to be with a set tamim. He says, "Vishuayim kol hazvachim shebetayra shenishtai mehen kazayis basar or kazayis chaylev zayrik adam." All the karbanis, as long as there's left one kazayis of basar or a kazayis of the chaylev that goes on to for the emurim, you could do the zrikas adam. It doesn't passel. Now, if you have only one kazayis of basar or chaylev, obviously the rest of the animal has many mummin. You cannot have. We're not talking about like a miniature animal that the entire animal is only a kazayis. Is the kazayis of basar left? Pretty much nothing left of this. It's all one big mum. So you see that b'shas zrika, you can do a zrika even with a mum. So and the Gemara terguma aben shana. So he said, Abai said it must be talking about that pasuk that says that you could do it. You could do the avodah even with an animal that's a balmum. He says no. When the Torah says, which is kazayis basar, I'm sorry. When we said before behaviyasa yehei, that's only on the part of the ben shana. That the ben shana has to still be a ben shana at the time of the zrika, and of all four avodas. But the part saying that it can't be a balmum, that is not accurate. So it would seem like you're left without a source. Where do you know kachar kalim? So Rashi explains that no, that we really, he holds you could just learn kachar kalim from kachar kachar. There's no, it must be that we're not machalik. So now we're left that the pasuk by the Korban Pesach, which says yiyah should be kol haviyasa yiyah, means only on the ben shana, that this keves can't be more than a year old at the time of the zrika. Now, a avodas, certainly the avodah of the Korban Pesach, we know all has to take place in the same day. You have to do the shrika, the shchita, kabbalah, halacha, and zrika all during the same day. It can't even be the next night. So how can we talk about whether the animal had a birthday for the next year? How could you have such a thing? It's either it's a year old or it's not a year old. How could it have a birthday during the day? And when we're trying to determine how old the behemoth is, we take a look at exactly what hour it was born. They have records. They have the birth certificate of the seh, and they look back. It was born the previous year on Yud Dalet Nisan at 2:00 in the afternoon, and they did the shchita at 1:00 in the afternoon, and now they're doing the zrika at 4:00 in the afternoon. It would be no longer a 1-year-old. It would already be more than a year-old seh, and that would passel it. We're on the bottom of Chaf Hei Amud Beis, along one line from the bottom. Amar Rav Ami, Amar Rabbi Elazar. Hi b'fnim v'ragleh b'chutz. If when you do the shechita of the animal is inside meaning in the heichal, in the Beis Hamikdash, v'ragleh b'chutz, and the leg of the animal is outside. And then chotach. So in that case, you obviously have a problem. The basic problem over here is chutz, that the dam is not allowed to go outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Not allowed to go outside of the heichal before you complete the avodah. Chotach va'ach kach shachat. So the animal was in this position. If he cut off the leg and then afterwards shechted the animal, it's kosher, because by cutting off the leg, you made it that none of the dam that was outside of the heichal was able to join with the rest of the dam that was kosher dam that didn't go outside of the Beis Hamikdash and go into to be mekubal in the kli and make the kli have dam that was yaitza. Now you're looking at me like that because you're saying it's a mum. How could you shecht an animal with a mum? Now we have to turn to the next page. Shachat va'ach kachotach sula. If you shechted the animal, but then afterwards you cut it, then it's possible because then you have dam that was nifsal b'yaitza. You have your good kosher dam, your non-yaitza dam was adulterated with a little bit of yaitza dam. In fact, the Gemara, the unspoken question that Rafal was asking me with his eyes, how could you bring a carbon that's missing? How could you shecht an animal that's missing a leg? There's no bigger mum than that. So it doesn't mean that you shechted it, you cut off the leg before the shechita. You cut off the leg after the what do you call it? After the shechita, they shechted the animal. Somehow, this is like, it's a magical thing because I don't know how it happens. You'd think that as soon as you shecht, immediately the Kabbalah begins. But the Gemara, we've seen before, the Gemara seems to think there's enough time to do something. And you quickly chop off the leg, the offending leg that's outside of the Beis HaMikdash, so that no dam comes from that leg that's chutz, that's dam chutz, that has a psul yaitz on it and joins with the other good dam. And then he was makabel. So we say chatav akibel ksheira, kibav chatach psula. But if he was already makabel it and then he cuts it off, it's too late because you're already makabel some of the dam that came from that leg that's outside. It's fact the Gemara, but we still have a problem. Chitach akibel ksheira v'amar v'zeira tzayim ma'izem b'bchar akibel damay pasul. The Gemara we just learned said that you can't have a balmum even by the Kabbalah. So what have you helped by saying that they cut off the leg after the shechita, but we just said that it can't be a balmum when you do the Kabbalah as well. That was the pasuk we quoted before. Amar Chisda Amar Avimi. So Chisda Amar Avimi says, no, what we're talking about over here is chaytach be'ever ad shemagia le'etzem. He didn't actually cut off the leg. He cut off all the basar of the leg, so no dam passes from that leg into the rest of the body, but he didn't cut through the bone, and that is not a mum, which is hard to understand, right? You would think that if you make a nick in the ear, that's a mum. So certainly cutting through the whole leg, but just leaving the bone would certainly be a mum. But no, that's not the case. So you haven't made a mum. All you did was stop the blood from coming. So Zok the Gemara, we said kibel v'achka chatach psula. We said if he's makabel the dam and then afterwards he did the chaticha, it's possible. That was what we said in the Brisa. The Gemara says, Shamino dam hamuvla mebeivarim damhu. We have a question that it's really relevant as far as eating kosher. You're not allowed to eat the dam of a behemoth. There's a question whether the dam that comes out of an aver, like if you took the dam, if you shechted an animal and all the dam of its heart came out, and then you cut off a leg, so there's no dam. The dam in the leg was isolated. Whether that is considered dam, the dam in a limb is considered real dam. That's also, or is it considered like just a liquid? It's bodily fluids, but it's not considered dam. So you see from here, from our Gemara, from the fact that you have to cut off this leg that's going to have a psul dam that has a psul yaitza, that dam is dam. Because if it wasn't dam, it shouldn't be ever. It shouldn't pass all the Kabbalah. So Gemara, no, Dilma mishum shamumus. It's not dam, but maybe it's basar, and the basar, it's like the oil or the fats of the animal. So maybe there's that even though it looks like dam, what it really represents is there's some fat of the animal. So you're having a little bit of the basar of the animal from that leg, which was yaitza, and that's going to passel the dam. So Zakdamar Shami, no, basar kosher kolim she yasuf nezugas dam passel. Says no. So you see, maybe this would bring us a raya, which we have a general question, even if it's shamnunis, so it's not dam. But how could basar of kachim kalim, basar of the kachim kalim, you're allowed to eat outside after the avodas hadam. After you do the zrika, you take the basar, you could eat it through the whole Yerushalayim. So what's the problem if some of the basar went outside? It's going to end up outside anyway. So the Gemara, so this is Taka Shaila that the Gemara has, and the Gemara says this would, if we're saying that you must cut off that leg, or at least cut off the blood flow from the leg, so you don't get the shamnunis from that aver that was yaitza, you see that the basar kachav kalim, even though it's lifnei zrikas adam, is enough to passel. So the Gemara, no, dilma b'kachay kachim. Maybe this din was only said by kachay kachim. By kachay kachim, you're not allowed to eat the basar outside of the azara. So on that, everyone would agree that the basar that's going to go onto the mizbeach is going to have a din that it's going to be paisel b'yaitza, and that's the reason why you have to cut off the leg. Zaktimar, Tanraban, kachay kachim shchitasam b'tzafen b'kibel damim b'klisharis b'tzafen. Kachay kachim, again, kachay kachim is a chatas and a oila and a mincha. All these things, the Torah dictates that you have to shecht it in the north side of the Beis Hamikdash, right? We all have those pictures in the beginning of the art scroll in that big picture book. So you see in the Heichel, you have the inside, not the Heichel, I'm sorry, the Chatzah. You have the Heichel with the menorah and the shulchan and the mizbeach hazav. Outside it has the ulam. Then you have the yard outside, and in that big yard there's a huge mizbeach opposite the entrance, and the entrance is to the west of the yard. That's where the ulam is. And the mizbeach is situated opposite it, and on its right side is the north, and its left side is the south. So the shechita has to be on the right side of that mizbeach. So the shechita has to be b'tzafen b'kibul dam b'klisharis b'tzafen, and the kabbalah sadam also has to be on the north side of the mizbeach. We've seen gemaras with the machlokes where exactly how far east and west the north is. Does it mean just opposite the mizbeach, or can it be even close to the ulam? Can it even be back toward the entrance to the chatzah? Zakdumar, Amad b'darim b'haysha yaday l'tzafen. If the kohen stood in the south and he took the knife to do the shechita, and he stuck it into the north where the animal was standing, b'shachat, and he shechted shechita like shera. Then the shechita is kosher. It's like, as we know, the shechita could even be done with a zar. And the Gemara learns it out from psukim. Rashi brings all the psukim, all these things. The Gemara doesn't really explain where it comes from, but Rashi explains a lot of these things are in the Gemara in the beginning of the next parak on Daf Lamed Beis in another 6 blot. A lot of these, that's where a lot of the psukim are. So, Legabi the shechita. Let's see the Rashi. We have a pasuk that tells you the person shechting doesn't have to be in the north, even though the carbon has to be. Aval makabel. Well, we didn't get up to that part yet. So Amad B'dar v'hayshi yad l'tzaf v'shachat shchatas l'ksher. The Gemara continues. Kibel kabalase psula. But if he sticks his hand in with the klisharis to be makabel adam, that passes. So Rashi, to continue with Rashi, have a makabel certainly is b'tzafin. Hilchach kibel kabalase psula. The Gemara continues. Hichnis roishe v'rubai kila nichnis kulai. If the kohen standing in the south part stuck his head and most of his body into the north part of the azara, and he was makabel adam, rubai is kekulai, and that's going to be considered he was makabel it in the north, and it's going to be kosher. Pirkas of what happened? Again, there seems to be this magical period of time between the shechita and the Kabbalah. He shechted the animal, and then the animal in its death throes jumped over, and it went out to the south, v'chazra, and then they dragged it back into the north, ksher. Even though it went from the south to the north to the south, out of the part where you're supposed to do the shechita and the Kabbalah, There's no psul yaitza. The psul yaitza, the idea that you're not allowed to go out of the makom kosher, is only relevant to going out of the azara, out of the Beis Hamikdash by kachim kalim, which is not allowed to go out. But to go from the Safa to the Darim, it's all part of the azara, so that doesn't pass. That's by kachim, which has to all be in the north. Kachim kalim, shchitasam b'pnim. A kachim kalim, which is a shlamim or a carbon pesach, a bachar, a meiser, all of these things, they don't have a requirement that has to be in the north part of the azara, it just has to be in the azara. Shchitasam b'pnim. B'kibul damam b'klishim b'pnim. The Kabbalah Saddam also has to be b'fnim in the azara. Ahmad b'chutz, if he was standing outside of the Beis Hamikdash, outside of the azara, again, the shechita is still going to be kosher. Rashi says, Ahmad b'chutz v'hoish yadu v'fnim v'shachat shachat ksher. L'kamam b'perak kol ha'psurim. Again, in that next parak, afilu min habakal l'fnei Hashem v'lo yashoichet l'fnei Hashem. We have a pasuk that we darshan to tell you that only the animal has to be b'fnim, but not the person doing the shechita. Kibol kabbalah psula, but if he did the kabbalah like that, if he did the kabbalah outside, with with him standing outside, it's going to be possible. Hechnis roishe v'ruba keilu lo nechnas. But in this, we're not going to say hechnis roishe v'ruba is a knisa. Rashi says hechnis roishe v'ruba keilu lo nechnas k'di afin l'kamam b'shmaitzim b'voyim el oyel moyed ad sheyavei kulay. Legabi going from outside to inside, we say b'voyim, he has to be entirely inside. So we're not going to say Rubai Kakula in that. And Rashi explains why that's only applies by the Kachai column where he's standing outside of the Azara, but it doesn't apply going from Darim to Tzaf, and then we'll say Rubai Kakula. Parchas aviyatz lechutz, and now if the animal, the same thing happened by the Kachai column, that it jumped after the shechita and it landed itself outside of the azara, the chazra, and then you brought it back in psula. Now you have a psul yaitza, that the dam went out of the azara. Even if you bring it back in, it was already passed with yaitza. You cannot do the kabbalah sadam with dam that went out of the azara. You see, from the fact that it was parchas aviyatz and then you brought it back in, that it passes. You see that kachim, the basar of kachim kalim that went out with nezrukas dam is enough to passel. So the Gemara, why? So because this basar, the Gemara is asking that even though the animal jumped out, what do we care? What are we saying that it's going to be passel? As Rashi explains, it must be talking about after Kabbalah. Because before Kabbalah, like we said before, you're going to have the problem that the dam, you can't do the Kabbalah with dam that was outside. So it must be talking about that the animal jumped out and it came back in. Now this basar that we're saying is possible because it went out, this basar is going to eventually be eaten b'chutz anyway. The basar of kachim kalim is allowed to be eaten anywhere in Yerushalayim. So why should it be? So this seems to be debatable whether basar kachim kalim sheyatza whether it should passel. So the Gemara no. Dilma ba'aliyah v'yaseres hakaved ushtei kleis. We're not worried about the basar that you're going to eat. We're worried about those portions, the imurim, that are going to eventually be brought on the mizbeach. Not all of the basar of the animal is eaten. The different chalevs and these particular imurim, I forgot, this is like the Yaseres HaKaved next to the liver and by the kidneys. All this stuff gets burnt on the mizbeach, and that has the status like kachei kachim, and that's going to have a psul yaitza, and that's going to become possible. The Mefarshim have a big question about whether once you passel the imurim, does that also passel the dam? Because this is, like, as we know, the imurim are not ma'akev, so maybe you would say it shouldn't passel everything else. The father of Shmuel asked Shmuel, He b'fnim ragla b'chutz ma'u. If the animal is inside and its regal is outside, what's the din? Now this should immediately bring up a question that we just said on the top of the yomid, that you have to cut off the leg that's b'chutz in order that you don't get mixed in dam that was b'chutz. So Rashi explains, he b'fnim ma'u l'shoichta l'chatchila. Rashi says, we're asking, before we said b'di'evet, that if the animal was outside and you cut away the basar so that the dam shouldn't come through, so we said that it's going to be kosher. Now we're asking whether you could do it lichatchila like that. Can you have the leg outside, make sure that no dam comes in, and shat like that? Amalek siv ve'vivium lashem ashrei tehikula lufnim. The pasuk says ve'vivium lashem. You have to bring it in. That it all has to be lichatchila. It should all be bifnim. So it's gonna lichatchila. You should not do such a thing, even though you've avoided a psul yaitza, but it's still not ideal to do it like that.
It's a funny question. After the top of Amr became such a crazy case, in order for it to be okay,
and now
they're asking lichatchila. Of course not. Right? I guess it's two different people.
No, what do you mean? Just because Adarabba was saying that it's all the same shita. It was saying
that's
that
all right.
And so the question is whether lechatchila you could do it. And we say we have a pasuk that says that it should be done. Everything should be done inside. That it should all the shechita and the Kabbalah, everything should be inside the azar. Zak the Gemara. So he says Vaita. Another question of Avur de Shmuel Mishmol. Tala v'shachat mal. So now this is Shmuel's father. I don't know if anyone had fathers like this. I had a grandfather who used to do this. Decided to make his life difficult. He asked him the following question. Tala v'shachat mal. What happened? Until now we've been talking horizontally. If the animal is bachutz, if it's outside of it's supposed to be in the tzafon and it's in the darim, if it's supposed to be in the azar and it's outside, what if we do a little vertical adjustment? If you took the animal and you hung it inside of the azara, but it's not on the ground. Amalei kshera, he says it's kosher, it's in the azara. Amalei ishtabeshta. He says no, you're incorrect. That's not going to be kosher. Be'inan shchita al yerach. The Torah says b'shachat oise al yerach hamizbech. It has to be on the side of the mizbech. Tzafayna lifnei Hashem. He's talking about kachay kachim, and the Torah requires it has to be next to the mizbech on the north. But leka, if the animal is hanging, it's not on the floor, it's not on the yerach hamizbech. So you're missing the yerach. So then Abu Shmuel asks him. He tried to trick him. He said, "Nitla v'shachad ma." What happens if the sheichet was hanging? The animal is firmly on the ground, but the person shechting it, if he's hanging, so he said, "What's going to be the din?" Amalei psuli. He said, "Oh, he got me last time. I told him it was kosher, and he proved to me it was pasul. So l'chayra, there's also going to be pasul." Amalei ishtabashte. No, you're wrong again. Shchita al yerach, v'lo sheichet al yerach. The shechita has to be on the floor next to the mizbeach, but the sheichet, the person holding the knife, there's no such requirement. So therefore, it's going to be kosher. So he asked him a further question. Nitla v'kibel ma'u. Okay, so once he got him on where he had the sheichet hanging, he says, what if the kohen who's being makabel the dam was hanging, not standing firmly on the ground by the kachay kachim? What's going to be the din? Amalei kshera. So he said, it's kosher. You just prove that you could shecht when you're not standing on the ground. So l'chayra, the makabel adam should also be kosher. Amalei ishtabashta. No, you got it wrong again. Ein derech shiras bakach. There's a requirement that you have to do lamed l'sharis when you do an avoida, except for shchita. Shchita is not like the same avoida like everything else, but the other avoidas, it says lamed l'sharis. You have to be in the Beis Hamikdash. You have to be on the ground. If it's hanging in the air like a trapeze artist, that's not derech shiras. That's not the way you do avodas. So then he asked him the final questions. Okay, so you said that hanging is not going to work for the Kabbalah. Tala v'kibel ma'u. What if you took the animal after the shechita and you hung the animal in the air? So you don't have. So you just said that
Sheikh,
Lamed.
the Sheikh.
We're not talking about the Sheikh. We're finished with the Sheikh, and now we're talking about Kabbalah.
So that's the difference. It's the same
But
Kabbalah, right? The previous question was also Nitla V'Kibel Maho.
The previous question was where the person doing the Kabbalah was hanging in the air, the one holding the clay. Now we're saying the animal is hanging and the blood is dripping out during the Kabbalah.
The Shechita is not a problem because we said it's not one of the. So if the animal is.
If the animal is hanging during the Kabbalah, what's going to be the din? So he said, okay, we just said that if the animal is hanging, I'm sorry, if the kohen is hanging, it's going to be possible because it's not derech shirs b'kach. So the Kabbalah, if the animal's hanging, it will also ruin the Kabbalah. Amalei psula, amalei yishtavashta. I got you again. Shchita al yerach v'lo Kabbalah al yerach. It just has to be the shchita has to be al yerach, and the Kabbalah doesn't have to be al yerach. So that's neither thing is going to apply. The derech shirs b'kach. This is not the person who's doing the avodah. This is the animal. And as far as al yarach, that's only on the shchita, but not on the Kabbalah. So Avu the Shmuel managed to trick his son, his Shmuel, get him to say the wrong thing on all four things. Amar Abaya says, but kachri kachrim kulam psulas, bar minitla. Abaya says all of them are going to be puzzle, except for nitla v'shachat. Except for he agrees that if the sheichet is going to be hanging, that's not a problem. But he disagrees with Avu the Shmuel, that he said that if you're toila, the person being makabel, he said it's ein derech shiras bakach. He disagrees. I'm sorry. He disagrees that if you hang the animal during the Kabbalah, he'll say that is also going to be possible.
No.
Yeah, he's saying, Amar Abai, b'kachei kachim kulam psulas ba'minitla v'shachat. He says the only one that's going to be kosher is if the sheichet, the person doing the shechita, was hanging. But if you had the animal hanging during Kabbalah, which the Avu the Shmuel had said was kosher, he said it's not a problem of yarach and it's not a problem of doing the avodah. He said it's kosher. Abai is disagreeing with that, right?
But we put that as far as shchita yarech like Kabbalah yarech, and if it's kosher, this last case he's arguing. There's no doubt right. Puzzle too.
Rashi says, "Kulam psulim ba'ami not lo shat." The b'sheichet like sev yarech ala ben nishchat because it's yeah. Avol tola v'kibel psula. He's disagreeing with Gabi tola v'kibel, where you hung up the animal in his kabbalah psula. Davir tzafin lav katzafin dami. Ubi eating kabbalah but tzafin gabina be'ezim mekayim. The Gabi kachim you need tzafin. So he says you don't have it's not a problem of al yerech that it's not on the ground, but you're missing the tzafin. Avagav the like sev yerech, but kabbalah tzafin mix. Avagav the like sev yerech. The Kabbalah, tzafin mi exit, but you do need tzafin. That he disagrees on that. But kosher kalim kol ksheres bar min nitla v'kibel, and the gabi kosher kalim they're all kosher except for nitla v'kibel, because he says so he disagrees with it. As a kosher kalim, Avu the Shmuel didn't discuss, but he says they're all going to be kosher. There's no requirement that it has to be b'tzafin. So he says everything is going to be kosher. You don't need al yarech. A yerech doesn't apply, but nitla v'kibel, you do need derech shiras, and with the person is hanging, when he does the Kabbalah, that's going to pass. Amar Rava, Maishna tola v'kibel v'kachim kalim, diksheret, daver pnim k'pnim dami, he disagrees with Abaya. He says, why do you say that tola v'kibel, if the animal was hanging, you did the Kabbalah, that was saying it's kosher by kachim kalim? Because we say wherever is inside, in the Beis Hamikdash is considered to be pnim. It's only on kachim kachim that we have a requirement of al yerach and tzafin. The kachim kalim, we say if the animal is hanging, it's considered inside. But kachim kachim nami avir tzafin katzafin dam. He says the avir tzafin should also be katzafin, and therefore tola v'kibel by kachim should also be kosher. He disagrees with Abaya. He says like Avu de Shmuel. Amarava beim kosher kosher and beim kosher kalam. So that's Rava's disagreement with Abaya. So Rava says his own shita. Beim kosher kosher and beim kosher kalam. Sheris, everything is kosher. Bar mentala v'shachat bekosher kosher, except for where he was toila the animal and he shechted bekosher kosher because you need safan, it's missing. Nitla v'kibel, you need jerach, right? Which is right. Al yerach hamizbeach, nitla v'kibel, and where the kohen is not standing on the ground. Okay, well, bein bekosher kosher, bein bekosher kalam, because that's a lack of shiras. He doesn't hold, and like we said, shchita, there's no problem of a lack of shiras that lav derech shiras bekach.
Is he disagreeing with?
He's not disagreeing with Avu Shmuel. He's disagreeing with Abaya.
With Rava. With Abaya.
This is Rava. This is
Right,
Rava
so
explaining his shita. First, Rava asked the kasha on Abaya, and now he's explaining how he himself holds, which is essentially, I mean, Avu Shmuel didn't say anything about kosher kosher, but he's agreeing with Avu Shmuel on the kosher kalam part, and then he's saying his own shita on kosher kosher.
Avu Shmuel was talking about kosher kalam for sure.
Just kosher kosher. He was just only talking about kosher kosher. But he says al yerach and safan. If the kohen is inside and his hair is sticking out, what's it in? The kohen has to be entirely lifnim. Like we said bevayim the behema, the whole behema has to be lifnim. We said if the leg is sticking out, it's going to passel. The same thing will apply. The gabi kain, his entire body, even his hair, has to be inside. Okay, we'll stop over here.
That's
All right. Thank you. Have a great Shabbos.
Good Shabbos. Yeah, but even so, he could be right near the